focused on leadership and communication to build your knowledge, authority, visibility, and influence as a leader. 6 dimensions: intelligence, the regulating and recalibrating; integrity, intelligence, trust, unification, intelligence, procedure, leverage, and results. Intelligence.
Welcome to Leadershipisation, all things leadership. If you've been following these weekly conversations or the podcast, you'll know that we've been talking lots over the last few weeks about accountability. We've been talking about accountability, and then what flows on from that is expectations, and then what flows naturally on from that is setting standards. And in talking about those, we've had a real outward kind of focus. You know, why is this important, and how might we do it, and how does it impact the productivity, how does it impact the culture of your team, all of those kinds of things. And today what I want to do is kind of flip that on its side and tackle one aspect of your mindset as a leader, or your behavior as a leader, that prevents this holding people accountable from actually happening. What we're going to look at is your feelings as the leader or the manager, because sometimes holding people accountable really feels like you're being mean. You may have almost like, and if you do feel that it's mean, then what you've done is you may have confused kindness with comfort, because accountability is not about cruelty. Accountability is not about attacking someone. It's not about humiliating them. It's not about making people feel small. Accountability, it's the moment where leadership says, this matters enough for us to actually deal with it. This matters enough for us to deal with it. And the reason that it feels really personal is because we don't want to be seen to be upsetting people. We don't want to think that the relationship will change. We worry perhaps that others might think that we're unfair. We worry that we might be seen as harsh or difficult or unreasonable. And so in our role as a leader, often what we do is we soften our message, or we delay having the conversation, or we make excuses, or we sit back and observe and just hope that the situation fixes itself. The uncomfortable reality here is that avoiding accountability may feel kind in the moment, but it's often very unkind in the long run, because when you're unclear to someone, the team will end up carrying the cost of that. And the standards that you're looking to establish in your team will weaken. Real kindness in leadership is not protecting people from the truth and clarity. That's not what it is. It's about giving them enough truth and clarity so that they can grow. My name is Beth Bergen. I'm a global leadership and communication coach. I'd love it if you would join me as we talk about how to deal with the emotional load a leader can often end up feeling when it comes to holding people accountable. We've got 5 key things that I want to start looking at today. And the first one is this. In our mindset, it's important that what we do is we reframe accountability from mean to kindness. Because as I said before, if you're seeing it as mean, then it's hard for you to hold anybody accountable. Now, here's a key point. Kindness is not the absence of discomfort. Just because you're being kind doesn't mean that you or the person you're talking to isn't going to feel some discomfort. Clarity delivered with care is kindness. This is kind. And if you can deliver that clarity with care, then you're much more likely to be seen as kind, to be seen as fair, and to be seen as respectful. Like, the problem is that we think that kind is all about not making anyone feel uncomfortable. And as I said, discomfort is not automatically harmful. We think it's going to be harmful, so we pull back from it. And it's actually kindest, where you can be your kindest, is when you name that gap in the standards or in that behavior really clearly. This is one of those self-leadership intelligence. It's one of the dimensions of leadership intelligence. It's all about you separating your discomfort from the other person's development. Now, often it's about us. It's about us, which brings me to my second point, because more often than not, the reason we avoid something is because we internalize what the other person's reaction is going to be. So we attach a meaning to it. Before we've even had the conversation, we imagine that people will be upset, they'll be defensive, they'll be embarrassed, they'll be disappointed. And what we do is we start managing their reaction before the conversation actually happens. We haven't had the conversation, but because we've attached a meaning to it, we start convincing ourselves maybe we won't do this. And this is right where accountability becomes emotionally expensive for you. This is when your behavioral patterns are likely to be kicking in. And what we do, having attached this meaning that they're going to be embarrassed or upset or uncomfortable or fearful, what we do is we soften the message to reduce our own discomfort. And then it becomes about you avoiding that emotional fallout. But what happens is that the standards are then lowered. When you start managing their reaction before you've even spoken, you're no longer leading the conversation. What you're actually doing, it's really weird. It's kind of like you're negotiating with your own fear. Yeah? You've attached this meaning, and so you're trying to negotiate with that. What flows on from that is that often people make a decision, I'll just avoid that conversation. We won't have that conversation. The third point I want to talk to today is that avoiding the conversation, it's not neutral. It's not neutral at all. We think that, if we ignore it, if we avoid it, it will go away. But saying nothing still sends a message. It still sends a really clear message. The person might not even realize that their behavior is a problem, but the team sees the gap. The team can see this person isn't doing it, and they wonder why the individual is being allowed to get away with that behavior. And as a result of that, the standard that you're wanting to set, it becomes unclear. And what we know is that that becomes then demotivating for many of your team, and frustration levels grow because what you're doing is protecting one person's comfort, but everybody else is getting demotivated and pretty frustrated. Now, I know that avoidance can feel like it's gentle to you. I'll just avoid it. I'll just ignore it. I'll just hope they're going to get over it. But the reality is that this transfers the cost to others, and it's still actually sitting on you. So there's an emotional load that you're carrying as a leader as well. Okay. The fourth point I want to raise today is this. I just have to pause because I think I'm going to sneeze, but hopefully it will go away. And in the meantime, there's a street sweeper outside my window making lots of racket. So if I'm looking a bit distracted, that's exactly why. Um, the fourth point that I want to raise with you today is this. Accountability is better when it's clear, when it's early, and when it's fair. So it's that whole kind of, you've heard me say before, have the tricky conversation before it becomes a tough conversation. The earlier you actually name it, the earlier you talk about the gap that you've observed or the lack of standard that you've observed, the less personal it's likely to be. Yeah. You can take the emotion out of it the earlier you raise it. You can't, there are a couple of reasons for this. The first thing is you can't, or they can't improve what hasn't been named. So if you're not saying, hey, this is what's going on, then it cannot be named. That's the first thing. The second thing is when you delay it, it becomes a bigger, heavier conversation. This is what I talked about before with that having the tricky conversation before it becomes tough. The more you delay, the bigger it becomes from your perspective, from their perspective, from your team's perspective, because you've been letting them get away with it for a period of time. The earlier you call people to account, the earlier you raise the issue, the more chance there is of repairing, of correcting the behavior, and of allowing your team member to grow. And that's really important. From your perspective, and this is what we're talking about you as well, not just about your team, noticing and addressing the behavior that you have once you've identified that there's an issue with your team member. So, noticing and addressing your own behavior is really important so that you can change that pattern before it just becomes part of your identity. Yeah. It's also important for you, for your team member, to name and address the behavior as well before that becomes a pattern that becomes their identity. Now, the thing here is that it's not about punishing people. It's not punishment. That isn't why you're holding someone accountable. It's all about, and this is what your goal would be. Your goal is about to reset. It's about ownership of the issue, and it's all about lifting that performance so that it reaches a standard that you're satisfied with. The fifth point that I want to speak to today is this. Courageous accountability requires you to manage yourself first. Courage intelligence is one of the dimensions of leadership intelligence. Now, it's all about you actually managing yourself first. So, what this means is, oh, hey, I'm feeling a little bit nervous about it, but your job is not, it is not to avoid the discomfort, it's to stay clear and to have that clarity while you are uncomfortable. And so, what this means is that it's worth your while to plan your message first. Strip out all of that emotion, anchor into the standard. It's not about blaming, not their fault, blame, blame, blame. Neither is it about you apologizing. Oh, probably I should have told you sooner. I didn't realize it was going to be this hard. Not doing that either. Neither is it all about you justifying and explaining. You need to decide what needs to be named, decide what needs to change, and decide what support is appropriate to help the person do that. Because, fair doesn't equal comfortable. It's about being clear, being steady, and being honest. And it's not always comfortable to do that. And so your responsibility in this is to build your courage intelligence and to understand that the conversations won't happen unless you're prepared to start them. So let's have a look at a really practical leadership intelligence tool that you can use. And this is what I call the clear and kind accountability checklist. And these are 4 questions to ask before any kind of accountability conversation. The first one is this: what is the behavior? Now, there's always got to be a rider for some of these questions, doesn't there? Like, what is the behavior? This is where it's important that what you do is name the behavior and not the personality. So, what that means is that you would say the report was submitted late twice, not you're unreliable. We're naming the behavior, not the personality. Yeah, that's really important. So the first thing is, what is the behavior? The second point is, what is the impact? So be really clear about why this matters. Now, what you'll notice here is that these are not long-winded explanations, because we already talked before about no blaming, no apologies, and no justification. So be clear about why it matters. For example, when this is late, the next person can't complete their work on time. There's no need to then go on and say, and that creates a ripple effect, and it would be so much better if you didn't put it in, and I'm sorry I have to hassle you about that. No. Right? No. So first one, what is the behavior? Second one, what is the impact? Third one, what is the standard? And this is where you need to just clearly state what the standard or the expectation is moving forward. For example, the standard is that updates are sent by 3 p.m. Thursday. Simple, clear, direct. Yeah. Fourth question in the checklist is, what support or reset is needed? And this is about you keeping it developmental. For example, what do you need in place to make sure this happens next time? Ask them. What do you need in place to make sure this happens next time? So this is a simple checklist for you to use in planning before you have an accountability conversation. So live, your conversation's going to go something like this. Here is what happened. Here is the impact of it. Here is the standard. Let's talk about what needs to shift. And that way, what you can do is keep the conversation clear, fair, and focused in the behaviors and not the emotions. Because what we're looking to do here is to manage that emotional load that you might be feeling. We want to make these kind of conversations much easier for you to have. We want you to have the tricky conversations before they become tough conversations. So I know you'll find that checklist really useful. The reflection question is where we move to next. Now, as I've said many times, these are questions. Think about them, right, make some notes, come back to them. Think about them, make some notes, come back to them. Because this is where a lot of your growth is. If you can develop this habit of reflecting, that will be really useful for you moving forward in all areas of your life, not just in your work environment. So that here is the question: where am I calling my avoidance kindness when the kinder leadership question would be to name the truth clearly? Where am I calling my avoidance kindness when the kinder leadership would be to name the truth clearly? We do that. We just go, oh, they've been having a tough time. Yeah, I know they've got a lot going on. They've had this happen at home. They've had that happen at home. So I won't challenge them. So the behavior becomes a real pattern for people, including for you. Yeah. Two types of patterns. One, they're not doing what you need them to do. Two, you're avoiding the conversation. Okay, what are our key takeaways? Well, the first thing is this: accountability is easier when it's clear. You have clear conversations, it's fair, and it's behavior based. That's the kind of conversations that you should be having. Because when you avoid, you create confusion, you create frustration, and it lowers the standards. Courageous intelligence, a dimension of leadership intelligence, is to manage your own discomfort to give clarity so that others can grow. They can't grow if you're not telling them where they can be improving. And so lots of people go through their working life never really being told about some of the behaviors that they have that are by now really embedded. So if accountability feels personal, if it feels like a big emotional load for you, then this is worth you paying attention to, because the issue is most likely not the conversation itself. Maybe it's about what you're making it mean. Maybe what you're thinking is, they might not like me, or they might think that I'm being really harsh or petty. Maybe you think that if there's any tension in your team, that builds bad culture, or that means bad culture. And maybe your pattern, one of your patterns, is that kindness means that you must soften what you were going to say. Now, your leadership, it can't mature and grow if you're always organizing it around avoiding discomfort. There's going to be some discomfort. And what you've got to do is you must decide whether you're more committed to being comfortable or whether you're more committed to growing and leading effectively and usefully. People won't grow with vague hints. People won't grow with softened messages. People won't grow. They don't grow when there's delayed honesty. They grow when leaders care enough to tell the truth clearly and respectfully. Now, if today's conversation has made you recognize some places where maybe you are avoiding conversations because they feel way too personal or too heavy emotionally, use the QR code or the link that will be on the platform that you're watching this on and book a call with me, because this work changes how you hold standards, how you build trust, and how you show up in those conversations that really matter. If you care enough to lead them, care enough to be honest and clear with them. Thank you so much for being here today. If you've got questions or comments, please pop them on the platform that you are watching this on. Thank you to those people who are liking, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye now.
To build your knowledge, authority, visibility, and influence as a leader, 6 dimensions. Intelligence, intelligence, trust